Should do intro.
Oh dear.
Just kidding. All right, pushing buttons. It says live on this end. We look over here. Moving, maybe. Yeah, there we go. Geek Out number 35. The Hero of Ages. Mistborn book 3 by the one, the only, some claim the father of modern fantasy, Brandon Sanderson. Delighted to have both Chaz and Natasha with us today. Thanks for joining us. And of course, the bearded Peter over there checking out his monitor. And yeah.
Random errors. I hope it's actually going through.
Hey Taylor, glad you could join us. Another fellow book friend. Make sure to check out his channel. And yeah, let's get this party started. Go ahead and looks like we just lost Natasha there. So we'll start with you, Chaz. What's newsworthy?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chaz with Books and Stuff with Chaz, and not much. I'm just really excited to be here. Books and Stuff with Chaz, and not much. I'm just really excited to be here.
We getting feedback?
We are. Let me see. Oh, that might have been mine. I didn't mute it.
Oh, okay. There we go.
There we go. Sorry about that, folks.
Yeah, two veterans today. Chaz, who's geeked out with us before, really looking forward to getting into it, and Natasha, who has geeked out with us several times. How's Eats, Treats, and Parsnips going?
It is good. We have some new recipes coming, and I don't know if any of you follow this whole food world, but last week I posted a pizza waffle. There was a great debate of whether it's waffle pizza or pizza waffle, so if anybody has some thoughts, love to hear that before I finalize what that one's going to be.
That's cool. I'm all about food, so.
Yes.
And pizza, waffle pizza doesn't matter to me as long as it's good. I'll eat it.
Oh, it was good. Very good.
It sounds.
I need to make another one.
I like waffles and I like pizza. Why not both together?
Exactly.
Yeah. So before we get too into it, I know that we've all read some of Brandon Sanderson before, but as far as like the overall Cosmere goes, what all have you guys read? Tasha has done Skyward Geek Outs with us in the past, and that is Brandon Sanderson. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chaz, but Skyward is not part of the Cosmere, right?
Yeah, that's his. Unless he finds a way to incorporate it at some point in the future, but yeah, it's a completely altogether world for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as far as other books on the Cosmere, Tasha, is Mistborn your first step into it?
No, I believe so.
Yeah.
Nice.
What overall, what's your impression of the trilogy?
Very good. So after the first book, I finished it. I woke up the next day. I was like, what's going to happen? I was like, oh, I finished the book. So then obviously I had to pick up the second one and then the third one. And then I just started into the next little, I don't know what you call it.
Era 2?
Sure. Yes, that.
Yeah.
So I've ventured into that realm a little bit too.
Nice. So you're hooked.
Oh yeah.
Had a bit of a book hangover and needed to continue on.
Exactly. Which is pretty rare that I wake up and was like, I need to know.
It's a sign of a good book.
Yeah. Book hangovers are definitely a thing.
Yes. How about you, Chaz? What's your experience with the Cosmere?
Yeah, so far I've read I've read Mistborn, Era 1, now. I've also read Elantris, Warbreaker, and all of the current Stormlight books.
Okay.
And also read all of Arcanum Unbounded except the Mistborn stuff. I haven't. Actually, no, I take that back. I read the 11th Metal, but I haven't read the others yet because they said that there may be spoilers for Era 2. So
I think they recommend you read it right before Era 2. I'd have to check the Coppermind, which is an amazing resource, by the way. But yeah, how about you, Pete? What's your experience with the Cosmere?
So I've read Mistborn Era 1. It's been a while since I've read Era 2. And then I'm current with Stormlight Archives, and we're doing those.
Elantris, Warbreaker, any of that fun stuff?
Nope, haven't done Elantris, haven't done Warbreaker. Skyward isn't eligible.
So yeah, I've read Emperor's Soul because it's an Arcanium Unbound. Great short story. I haven't gotten to White Sand yet. I've heard a lot. Actually, I've heard mixed reviews about White Sand. That's his graphic novel, which is technically part of the Cosmere. It's a bit pricey as far as graphic novels go. And most of my quote reading is audiobooks. So yeah, it's been a long time since I reread Mistborn Era 1, and coming back to it, there's a lot more of those Cosmere Easter eggs, like Hoyd in the third book, which Vin doesn't go and use him as an informant. But I thought that was interesting. There's the Hoyd reference.
I'm by that, honestly, because I always look forward to his little interactions in the world.
Yeah. So yeah.
So we added this. I just want to click buttons.
Okay. Click.
All right. Sorry.
Cue
Spent all
the
that
intro.
time on it, and
Yes.
I finally got it into the software.
Nice intro. Yeah.
Thank you. Playing, try to break stuff. That's what we do.
Yeah.
So, gosh, where to begin with this series? Like, if you look at where we started from the beginning of book 1 all the way to the end of the third book, it's quite a journey. Like, a lot of the character development, the progression. I think it'd be a lot of fun just to go through and talk about some of the different story arcs. Out of all the characters, who do you guys feel developed the most? I know.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that is a tough one because so many of them did. I mean, we've seen Vin grow up so much from more or less a teenager into her ranks as this mostly all powerful Mistborn.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen so many changes in Ellen too, and then just Sazed blows her out of the water, just kind of out of the blue too. So it's kind of
a toss up there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of advancement and development for all of them in their own unique ways, and that's what makes it so enjoyable.
Yeah.
You can relate to the characters in different ways, right? In their journey.
If I had to vote, I would say maybe Sazed, because there's 2 points that I distinctly remember. Obviously, the end of the third book is kind of hard to forget.
Mm-hmm.
And then midway through, they're all blurring together, but I think it was the second book, maybe, when they were fighting and trying to keep the armies out of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Oh, I'm just a scholar. How am I supposed to do anything?" It's like, I don't know. Hopefully my gate will somehow not be attacked, right? And then at the end, he's like giving it his all, and he's still there. And I remember there was a spot where he kind of took a step back. I was like, "Whoa, I did it.
Yeah.
I don't know how." So to me, that I remembered that, which I forget a lot of things after, especially 20 hours of another book. It stuck with me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I had always throughout the first two books, especially, Sanderson was always just a side character, or it felt that way to me. He didn't really feel like he had much importance to the series. He was just kind of there in a supporting role, and then all of a sudden the ending happens. I'm just like, wow, okay, I did not see that coming.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something that I keep seeing with Brandon Sanderson is some authors, the foreshadowing is just so heavy-handed where you're like, okay, I could write this. But with Brandon, it's like if he shows it to you, there's a reason why he's showing it to you. And then when you look back, you kind of see all the pieces that fall into place, right? Like when we're talking about the Hero of Ages and like the final moment where Sazed's there and you start going through the prophecy and thinking about like, the verbiage and whatnot. And it's like, it's so literal, right?
Yeah.
Like he'll wear everything on his arms, deny his people, to be their ruler, et cetera, et cetera. And, just his journey, because he was such the optimist, such the upbeat person in the first book, and then after Tindwyl dies, in the third book, like he's just in this pit for so long, and it's relatable. And I really enjoyed the scene there where Spook just kind of like peels through everything. Like everybody tries to pull him out, and then Spook's like, "Oh, I just figured it's because of Tindwyl." And it was like, oh wow, like here this guy that we dismiss for everything just kind of like cuts through it all and gets Sazed to kind of be a little bit more introspective about his actions and what he's doing.
And that's another thing that's kind of interesting with the series is how it's fairly, I guess, has a lot of religious elements, and it's pretty common for, people to struggle with it or to go through hard times. And the common theme of like, well, if there is a, higher power, why are they letting these terrible things happen? And yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that element came in several times throughout the series with the different characters kind of questioning. And then, of course, the whole book is centered around this higher power or something, right? So it's not like you can even readily dismiss it. And it's interesting to see how they all come to terms with it in their own way.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, each of them has really had to deal with accepting destiny in one form or another.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I think what was so interesting, and Carl, you mentioned after when it ends, you go back and look at things in a different perspective. I did that immediately after finishing the book. I sat there for a few minutes. I'm like, whoa, what did I just read? And then I went
Yes.
to the very beginning of the book, and those little interludes at the beginning of each chapter. I am the hero of ages, unfortunately, and those little interludes at the beginning, at least in book 2, I had always attributed to Rashek, but apparently it was the actual hero of ages narrating it this whole time, and I'm like, okay, I didn't catch that.
Yes.
Or, well, I guess that's where I thought it was different, because I thought book 1 was actually not Rashek. It was who should have been the hero. And then book 2, I figured it was, the Lord Ruler. And then I thought 3 was the Hero of Ages, Caesar. But I guess it could have all been Caesar.
Yeah,
I
I think you're right about book 1. I don't think it was, but I feel like books 2 and 3 were both being narrated by Caesar. I could be wrong though.
It's another point to Brandon where a lot of books put that little interlude or beginning snippet to each chapter, but they don't execute where you're like, why is this information relevant? But, book 1, we spent trying to depose the Lord Ruler. And then book 3, we're essentially justifying everything that he did. And it's like, okay, he started off and he tried to get rid of the mist because that was what was killing the crops. And that's what he thought the deepness was. But that didn't work. So, yeah, it's just all these other things. And then the way that the religions that Caesar has been collecting end up being the linchpin to, have the star charts to put it back in the correct orbit and, redo the humans and create them as they should have been, and just came through for everything.
Yeah. So many good lessons from this series. And when I first read it, granted, this was probably 10 plus years ago, I had just been doing like a binge of fantasy stories where kind of like I said, like the foreshadowing and everything, like they were good stories, but you could pretty much write it yourself and get to the end, and it was very, this is definite evil and this is definite good. And what I kind of enjoy about this trilogy is, the Lord Ruler, who was like the bad guy at the end, you get further in the series and it's like, wait, like he wasn't really evil as if, people make it out to be. And I think we tend to do this in our own lives where it's very much like, oh, absolute evil. Oh, absolute good. No, it's just a bunch of people trying to do the best they can. And sometimes they move the planet too close to the sun because they don't know what they're doing. And so then they have to break more things to fix what they're doing. And it's really makes you stop and think, right?
Carl, there are so many parallels with what you just said to entrepreneurship, to science, to politics, to so many things where it's just people doing their best, and that's what happens,
Yeah, and oftentimes we fail miserably along the way, and somehow it all turns out pretty all right. So
yeah,
and we don't give up.
In some ways, it reminds me of this. I believe it's a Japanese like fishing tale, which I'm sure you guys and the listeners have heard too, where it's like there was a son who, let me think, the fisherman and his son, and somehow there's a horse involved or something, and this horse runs away, and the neighbors say, "Oh, I'm sorry for your bad luck," and then the horse comes back, and they're like, "Oh, good luck." But then in trying to deal with the horse when it came back, the son broke his leg, and the neighbors say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your bad luck." And then the army comes, and they don't take the son and draft him into the army because his leg's broken. And they're like, "Oh, good luck." And I feel like this series did a lot of that, where it's like, I don't know what's juggling, what's bad and what's good. It's just what is, and it's circumstances of more consequences, and then you see what unfolds next.
Right. Hey, there's a good quote from Mistborn with that, right? Like consequences. For every push, there's a pull. For every action, there's a reaction. If only we could burn some metals, pewter drag to get through all the work that we need to do.
Oh man, yeah,
that's called caffeine.
Caffeine is all.
Yeah, we got the human version.
Yeah, I got my pewter right here. So
I haven't had pewter in a while.
Were there any like big kind of WTF moments for you guys that stick out, or laugh out loud moments for you. I know I had several laugh out loud moments during the third book, like when Vin and Ellen were talking, and Ellen said something along the lines of, like, I think it was something like a hat trick or something, like in a short amount of time, you managed to kill my God, my ex-fiance, my father, and my brother. It's like some weird hat trick or something. Like that just got me busted out laughing.
Yeah.
How about for you guys? Anything jump out?
Well, I don't remember a whole lot of a lot of laugh out loud moments, but I definitely remember a lot of WTF moments. One of which, of course, is the elephant in the room with Seiza being the hero of ages.
Yes.
But there were a few others too. Like Taylor mentioned Ben's earring.
Yeah.
When we found out that was a like a mini version of a hemalurgic spike, I had no idea. I was like, whoa, no wonder she hasn't been able to access the power of the mist.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she becomes, I don't know, the replacement version of
the preservation.
Yeah. That whole there were just so many, and then finding out who the Koloss were and who the Chondra are. There was just too many to name.
I really enjoyed the Chondra story arc and learning about their lore.
Yeah, I did.
And just their overall mentalities and approach to things. Does anybody else feel like the Inquisitors really got the bad deal when here you have Vin, who has a spike through her ear that allows her to pierce copper clouds, and the rest of these guys have like spikes through their eyes and their hearts and all that stuff? It's like, you mean to tell me I could just have a couple of earrings to make this happen?
Not necessarily, though, because I think depending on where it's placed and what it's made out of,
right,
for it.
Yeah, and it was probably the spikes can hold a lot more power. So, like when he killed somebody to make the Inquisitor, essentially, the power probably doesn't escape from the larger spikes as quickly as it would from Vin's earring. So,
good point.
Though there was one,
for sure,
one moment that didn't quite add up for me. So we know Vin's mother was Mistborn, killed Vin's sister to create the hemalurgic spike to give Vin the power to pierce copper clouds. But then she goes and she straight up stabs it through, or force pushes it through one of the Inquisitor's heads, and then she puts it back in, and it didn't gain any additional hemalurgic power. It could be just because, like you were saying, Chaz, it's a small spike, so it's already got a charge, and it couldn't hold more.
Yeah.
It's a little didn't we just do this?
Kill the Inquisitor with it either.
Okay, yeah, I guess since they didn't die from it.
Yeah. That's what I thought about that too. Yeah, that's how I took it, but I could be wrong. Yeah.
So, real quick, Taylor brings up a good point, and this is something that, like with a lot of other authors, I get just exhausted reading lengthy descriptions. But then as we talked about it a little bit earlier, just the mastery of book 3, where Brandon Sanderson gives us the pieces we need to put it all together, right? For example, mistings with ATM, where previously the Lord Ruler had, put out this propaganda that you can only be a misting of, I believe, the first 8 allomantic metals. So there was all this misinformation. Yet here, the name of the
Or how preservation left hints in nature to have the oddity of the 16.
Well, there's that, but the fact that we learned that there can be an ATM misting because of it's not the Inquisitor, the one guy, I think is Fadric City. I forget his name, but the king that we go to conquer.
Yeoman?
Yeah, Yeoman. So like here we are, we get to see that, oh, he's not a Mistborn, but he's a misting with the ATM. And then like we learn about that kind of indirectly and kind of expand the world and build the world. And then when we need to know it at the end with like the final battle, it's like, oh, like we got that piece earlier and it makes sense to kind of like build the world, build the lore without it just being this data dump. And there's like a lot of little nuggets like that throughout the whole series.
I think it goes into that foreshadowing that we were talking about earlier. It's just enough that you're like, oh, I think I remember something that's relevant. And then you get a little bit more and then a little bit more. And then it's like, oh, okay, now the world's a little bigger. And then it just keeps layering.
Right.
It's why I constantly recommend this series to people who are trying to get into reading or fantasy, because like there's a lot of other really good series I enjoy, but they're cumbersome, right? Where here with Mistborn, it's, you know, a little bit, layers, and then by the third book, we understand the full extent of all three of the different magic systems, where if you tried to dump all that in the first book, it would just be too much, right?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't have had a whole lot of relevance. I had a lot more relevance with Ruin, been letting Ruin out and Ruin being able to take care of them and each of the charges. And it seemed like an offset because humanity was made of more of preservation, but also Ruin. So they were offset that way. And then due to whatever, the Lord Ruler not wanting his bracers, his hemalurgic metals to be pulled off, he had him piercing his skin, which then gave Ruin a chance to speak with him. And he ended up making the opposing 2 of Ruin and 1 of preservation. But anyway, so side note, blurb. I've always wanted a tattoo encompassing like a yin yang and finding the balance in life. And I need someone to draw me up the end scene there where we've got Ruin taking over Marsh and we've got Vin being missed and absorbed into Ellen. And just like that fight scene there, and then below it, just have Caesar as he's like transcending and absorbing all the knowledge. Like that right there is just beautiful, and I need it depicted in artwork.
Yeah,
that is good.
That would be pretty awesome. It would take up a lot of space, though. You're just going to do your whole back.
I was going to say it'd probably have to be a back piece, or it could be like something funky and have like a Vin on one arm, and then going across the back have Ellen over a shoulder blade, and then Marsh over a shoulder blade, and then have
in
Ruin.
one hand you have Ruin, and the other hand you have. That would be pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Walking Mistborn piece of art. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you put the call out there. Maybe somebody can help you out.
Yeah. If anybody knows any good artists / tattoo artists, leave them in the comments below or hit us up so we can hook Peter up. Probably after COVID. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, they're opening up, but apparently everybody wants one now. I was talking to someone else, and they're all booked for months and months on end. Besides the point, though. Another thing, side note, that really irked me. We're in the epilogue now. Caesar is unfortunately the hero of ages, and he's writing a note to Spook. He's like, hey, so I fixed your, savant tin stuff, and I made you a Mistborn, thanks to Kelsier. So, okay, there's an afterlife. We talked to Kelsier. And then he's saying, sorry, I couldn't fix Vin and Ellen, but be assured they're happy. So he's talked to Vin and Ellen. And this whole journey of his was so that he could decide whether or not Tyndall, where she went. And I totally was just ready for that 007 moment where Caesar gets a girl, and they didn't even mention it. So I was a little ticked that Tyndall didn't, P.S., something, something, something.
I got the girl.
Or, well, that or just like, Spook's now a Mistborn. All our other big characters are dead. Vin's dead, Caesar's ascended, Ellen's dead, Spook's now our original crew, Mistborn, and Ham's just going to want to go build his family probably, but yeah.
I was about to say Ham, Breeze, and Spook. Anyone else from the original crew make it?
Nope. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I have a lot of respect for an author that doesn't have main character immunity, where like they just can't be touched.
I mean, Vin gets a lot of those clutch moments, so
yeah, she
like
does
all the way through.
She does,
but it's all, I guess, justified in some means. The fact that Vin snapped during her, being born, snapped during childbirth, and absorbed part of what we know as preservation through the mist as a baby. Like that's a leg up nobody else could have had. And then the simple hemalurgic spike for, both of ruin and preservation fighting over this pawn.
So Peter brought up his, shortcomings for the book. Natasha, Chaz, did you have any promises that weren't kept, or things that didn't really click for you? I had one that kind of, I don't know if it was really a plot hole, but as I was going back and re-listening to it this last time, I had some questions about the siege and just how effective it was going to be, because we know that he has a cache of food, right? And we find out within the first interaction that they've found the cache. So if the whole point of the siege is to starve them out, yet they have this massive cache of food.
But it wasn't. It was about finding the message written in the metal from the Lord Ruler. Like, yeah, that was...
Right. But the whole way they were going to get them to surrender and do that was the siege, wasn't it? Where they were trying to starve them out, and even said like, oh, the grain and the cash, they're going to eat it instead of plant it. I don't know.
I think it was initially, and then after they figured out that he had already opened the cache, it was kind of like, well, I can't send my army away because then I'm susceptible, so I gotta, plan them out here and continue to flex as we're, staring each other down. And then it was a lot of things going on all at once, because that's when Vin, had Ruin appear to her, and we now know that the voice of her brother, can't think of, Reem, was actually Ruin all along.
Right.
And, what a twist. And then, she gets a chance to read the words, and it was so beautifully done, where it's like, oh yeah, final message. What's going on next? What do we got? And it's like, oh, I don't know. Good luck.
Yeah.
And it was just so beautifully done. And then, the way Vin is like, okay, well, the only time the Mist seem to, play nice is when she's in a lot of trouble. And it's like, okay, that all makes sense. But then we come to learn that, through Spook decoding the hemalurgic spike and getting the message to Marsh through, I forget who died. Some rando. I think he was somewhat important in the first book for the army.
Soldier,
But
yeah, the soldier that Vin spared.
yep. Anyway, another thing that I was a little upset that the Chondra Horser, or however you pronounce it, didn't ever get to Vin and amass his Chondra army. Granted, it all worked out well, and it did a lot of extra stuff while diffusing or distracting what you were going for. Because the whole time he's like, I've got to get to Vin. And then he shows up and it's a Breeze and Caesar, and he's like, oh, okay, time, blah-de-blah, I'm leaving. And Caesar's like, wait a minute, what? What do you call me? And then it's like, bum, bum, bum. And then we take Caesar back, and he's like, I got to go get Vin. And then we're out, we're doing our thing, and he's like, just kidding, I'll go back and save Caesar. It just never quite finishes his mission.
Yeah, that part to me felt a little bit like things didn't quite match. When I was listening to that part, I was thinking, wait, but wasn't he here? And it was supposed to be like how many weeks to get here? And I know he's running really fast, but weren't they seriously in trouble and they're way over here? How is this working? I never put all that together, so I just believed it and kept reading.
I think Brendan covered it well, because he talked about the blessings and how Vin's original Chondra had the blessing of potency, and he explained it when he was horsing Caesar around, and he had essentially
he had a horse body, and then he ate a pig for the extra mass.
Yeah, because he's
so.
And then between the muscle,
Anybody else? That was another kind of.
That's for sure.
Oh, what was that, Chaz?
It did get a little convoluted during all that. Some of it, yeah.
I had a laugh out loud moment when I was thinking about this horse pig and then Sazed, and then they were talking. So I'm like, okay, so Sazed's riding, and then you have this horse pig face turn around or whatever and talk to him, and it's just yeah.
And obviously they're going at top speed this whole time, right?
Through ash as the world is dying around them. So yeah, now that we have a couple of Peter's shortcomings for the book, how about for you, Chaz and or Tasha? Anything stick out? Promises not kept. Sazed, we're going to assume, got the girl in the end.
That was his whole problem, and that was his whole question of faith, and that's what brought him around to, some days you just need to believe. Just like Demu said, some days people just need to die.
Well, and I think part of it too is because he's the hero of ages. It kind of seems like one of those things where you're, as the hero of ages, you're destined to be alone, since you can live for how many thousands of years.
Yeah.
That's not really the kind of life that, it would kind of be like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Highlander movies, but it would kind of
time ago.
You're living through all these centuries, and you get together with all these different people, and then they end up growing old and dying, and you're still young and alive, and you have to go through all that grief and everything. It's probably, it says it was probably better off not having to deal with that. That probably would have been too much for him to bear, to lose her to a natural death, even when he's still alive. So.
But I thought that was the message with Spook, where he was saying, oh, well, I made you Mistborn. It was at Kelsier's request. They're all hanging out. He's just the OG, I guess. It didn't really go into too much detail, but then also for, Vin and Ellen, he's like, well, I tried to fix them, but you can't bring back the souls. I'll get better at this.
Yeah. Nothing really stuck out to me as far as promises that I didn't feel were kept. I thought he did a pretty good job of wrapping up all the loose ends. What about you, Tasha?
Yeah, same. There are a couple moments going back to like the laugh out loud, where it's like, well, okay, I guess, sure, I'll believe that.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of reading a sci-fi book, you know.
Yeah.
Like one of them, what was it, the Kolos, when Vin was asking like, what about the little ones? Where do you get new ones? And I was like, they're right there. She's like, no, the littler ones. He's like, they're right there. She's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
We do get some more of the Kolos in Era 2, which is kind of interesting. And there's some minor foreshadowing in Era 1 for Era 2, which again, you know, Brandon Sanderson, you go and you look back and you're like, oh, wow, he's showing me something. This means something. What are your guys' thoughts or impression on Rashik or the Lord Emperor at the end of book 3? Because at the beginning of book 1, he's just like such a tyrant, right? Just slaughtering the Ska, you know, oppressing everyone, setting himself up to be, you know, a god. And yeah, like I know for me, towards the end of the 3rd book, like Chaz was saying, like living through all the years and everything, like you kind of, I don't know, I felt a little empathy for the guy. Like here, he turned all his friends into Chondra. You know, everyone he knew, the world he knew is gone. He's basically trying to do what he can to prepare, and he thinks he's going to fail and die. Yeah. What do you guys think? You have something to say, Pete?
So, in book 1, there's a moment where Vin finally breaks into the Lord Ruler's middle tower or whatever that Kelsier was trying to get into this whole time. And when he turns around, you know, we get that evil villain, you know, if I just had a cat, it would fill out the picture, evil monologue. Anyway, so we get that moment and she sees him and she's like, wait, this isn't Lord Ruler. He just looks, you know, old and tired. And then like when he's also talking to the Inquisitors about how they want to keep her because one of the nobles actually didn't, you know, slaughtered the Ska after procreating with them and yada yada, and which gets them to be the... Anyway, so I felt like in book 1, he did... You know, he gave that vibe that the Lord Ruler was tired and, you know, how many times do I have to fix this? Which kind of brings me to the point of, like, up until we found the ATM, I didn't think we were going to find it because after book 1, the fact that he's able to burn the metal and then store it in a fair chemical charge in another piece of metal, I thought that's what he was doing because ATM burns out so quickly. I thought he was burning the ATM and then converting it into a metal storage, which then was ripped from his arms at the ending. Because how else do you... But yeah, anyway, it kept growing and being more... But yeah, I felt like it displayed how the Lord Ruler was, you know, old and tired. Felt like he saved it, but yeah.
Well, there were those moments too where both Ellen and Vin were struggling. They're like, I don't want to be like that. And they saw parallels with what they were doing and what they were struggling with. And it became instantly very relatable because clearly from the beginning they were on the good side. And you're like, okay, so if they're struggling with the same thing, then maybe he wasn't so bad. And I think that slowly brought to light the bigger picture and how large of a situation he had tried to clean up and how massive of an undertaking Vin was now adventuring on without even knowing it by having killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something, I guess, from the whole like life lessons section of this. Ellen in book one is a, learned person, whatever. He's some rich, noble, snooty kid, nothing of it. And then two, he tries to embrace his ideals and become something that he could be proud of, but that doesn't work. And oftentimes in management, in my personal experience, when you go from a crew to a manager, they only see you as a crew member, and you've got to put on like a different face or a different hat, because when you're one of the crew, you can BS with them, it's whatever. But as he's an emperor, when he's in front of the army, and what Tyndall taught him, that he's got to present that front, and that he's got to be that person that they want, that they need. And then he, brings down his walls around Vin. He's still able to accept counsel. And I'm sorry, Ham only got one kudos, or one yeah, we got to see Ham in book 3, where he finally came to a decision where he's like, no, we don't attack. And you have that whole did you just make a decision about something moment? And so I don't know. Anyway, long story longer. It took. There's layers in how the structure works, and yes, it's nice to have one sliver of infinity that can stomp anybody who gets out of place. But in other structures, you need, the morale and everything else to come together, and then below them you have your generals, and below them, and yada yada.
Yeah. How about you, Chaz, with the Lord Emperor?
Yeah, I definitely felt like I saw a different side of him as the books went on. Especially at the end of book 1, with his comment to Vin, you don't realize what you're doing. You don't realize what I've been protecting you from, that kind of thing. And then as we get to see more of his story throughout the books and to the end, where he had really got in over his head and really doing the best he could with the power, even though his personality wasn't really a good one to be in power, probably, but he was trying, and it kind of made me wonder, looking back. I wonder if there was more of a reason why, that the Scott, did that whole rebellion to try and overthrow him and everything like that. And even though it was awful that he was keeping the Scott poor and destitute and things like that, you got to wonder if he had good reasons for doing it. These reasons that seemed good to him. The right intentions. Maybe if he had too many people of influence and didn't have different castes and different levels of people, maybe there would be more of a risk of the adium being found and Boone coming back into his full power. Who knows what his motives were, But I did really start to think, well, what if, he was still bad, but what if he wasn't as bad as he was originally made out to be?
Going back and rereading it, I really came to appreciate how much influence Ruin had on everything, and the subtle nudges and influences. And it seems like every time I reread it, there's another moment where it's like, oh wow, this is because of Ruin. This is because of Ruin. And this last time for me, we always knew that the ATM was important, right? But we thought it was more so for the combat and the fighting. But we later learned, because of Ruin, that is his body, that is his power. And there were several subtle nudges with Vin where she's like, oh, I need to find the ATM. And then going back through it, it's like, oh, that's Ruin's influence, because he wants her to find it. Like, he's playing this master level game of chess where he's waiting to see who reveals it where. That way he could just go. And we see that with Marsh in Fadric City. And yeah, the higher powers.
Right.
I want to throw a different sort of question out there, still in the Lord Ruler topic. So, back in book 1, obviously there's this concept amongst everybody that he's evil and should be overthrown or removed somehow, right? But if he knows so much, enough to have made all these stockpiles and safeguard him and all these things, and knows that if Vin kills him, that she's just unlocked a terrible situation, what would have happened if, say, Ruin had not had as much influence? And what if the Lord Ruler, instead of treating Vin as opposition, had instead welcomed her as an able-bodied next generation help to solve this problem he's been facing alone the whole time?
Yeah.
Obviously the whole story would be different, but I wonder, like, it's the balance between preservation and ruin, right? In that case, maybe if there was a whole different side where at these key moments, maybe preservation had a little bit more of a nudge than ruin, how would the story be different?
So, on the similar line of thought, when Caesar takes both powers, and the fact that, the Lord Ruler thought he was a hero, and he did what was right, and it brings up the question of how were the powers separated, and whenever one of them dies, like when Ellen's talking to the spirit of the mist, and then he goes away and the body falls out of the mist, and now it's power can't be destroyed, it can only be converted or whatever. And same thing when we destroy Ruin and a body comes out, like they were men before. And where I think it couldn't have worked is because due to the Lord Ruler's hemalurgy, or not hemalurgy, ferochemy, he had to wear his metal mines, and due to the power of allomancy, they could push metal unless it was penetrating his skin, which then let Ruin, direct him more. Granted, he's been dealing with it for a while, and he could have, he's used to it now, but...
Yeah. Stefan brought up the drawing the mist to her and the power there. In a way, like, Vin was kind of the champion of both, right? Because, like, Ruin picked her for the hemalurgic spike, and then
I also kind of wonder, though, if I wonder if the Lord Ruler really could have drawn in the mist, though. Anyway, it almost seems like because she was a Mistborn is why she was able to control the mists.
Is that how?
But
I don't know if as a Feruchemist he would have been able to use the mist to his advantage anyway.
I thought he was both, because he was Mistborn and Ferochemist.
I don't think he was a Mistborn.
Or he became it because he had all the beads that created the Ellen. When Ellen's about to die and he takes one of the beads, he becomes Mistborn. Right. And Caesar also goes through and explains how the beads at the Well of Ascension were the physical form, the mist is the vapor or whatever form, and then the Well of Ascension was the liquid form. Right. And that's how he made his nobles. all of his nobles, had the beads and became Mistborn. I think the only reason that he couldn't have done it is because when preservation sacrificed its consciousness to the Well of Ascension to hold Rashik,
Right.
the whole betrayal bit, it wasn't able to, emphasize how to utilize it.
Mhm.
And then the only reason it worked out for Vin is just the strenuous circumstances of the whole event of her essentially, only having the instincts of a fetus or baby and snapping while she was being born and then absorbing the mist like right at the beginning. So
Right.
I don't know. I think it was subconscious.
Mhm.
And then, due to alchemy, he had to have the metal piercing his skin, so he never could. And he can't take the metal off because then he's old and dies.
Right.
Yeah, because it was the two different powers that allow him to live forever, right? Because allomancy draws its energy from the metals, ferrochemistry draws it from the body, and hemalurgy draws it from other people, right?
Or
Like
blood
the
of
other
others.
side. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that part I had to listen to a couple times. I was like, wait, what? How does that work?
One thing that would have also been an interesting twist, since Tasha, you were talking about, what if scenarios. It would have also been interesting if they had, when she found the Lord Ruler, what if she had stripped him of everything that could give him power, but they just imprisoned him so that they could learn more from him.
Yeah.
That would have made for a much shorter series, obviously, but, because they'd have all the answers pretty much. But that would have been a curious twist if he had kept the Lord Ruler alive.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like all the information still would be subject. Like, yeah, he had all that knowledge, but in his mind, he was the hero of ages. He had fulfilled the prophecy and is the, sliver of infinity. But it took, essentially killing both preservation and ruin before, they could be assimilated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what if is very interesting, but if it was all communicated via like writing on paper or speaking, then obviously then there's that twist, and then how would that have changed, any of the downstream events?
Yeah. Well, if Rashik was so highly motivated to oppose ruin, like when he was losing there, he could have pleaded his case more instead of just that last little moment of like, you don't know what I do for humanity, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, wait, stop.
The all-powerful word, stop.
He's got the Chondra mentality, we outlive everything. And another thing that either didn't make sense or irked me that I didn't get a conclusion to was book one, the whole reason we knew when to attack the Lord Ruler's little middle tower thing was due to the times that he goes there, and he went there so frequently, it was like every week or multiple times a week. But then it took us a year before we found the Well of Ascension due to Rashik's prodding, and then after it was over and we released Ruin, why wouldn't the power and the consciousness continue to fill it up? And or did it fill up on a weekly basis? Or was it like 1,000 years and Rashik was about to pick it up again? I
think it was 1,000 years, right?
Yeah.
Like 1,000 years to fill up.
Oh, but at the same time, the Lord Ruler went there. I guess that's true. It does mention that he only held it once.
And then it was getting ready to come again, and that's why Ruin kind of played his cards, so to speak, and maneuvered events to get us to where we're at. Yeah. I thought the Chondra's betrayal there was pretty interesting. The fact that they allowed Kelsier to hire them to overthrow the Lord Ruler. That was kind of one of those big moments for me, because like here it is, he's the father to them, and they, are doing everything on his behalf, and then they let themselves get hired out to pretty much kill the father. I thought that was pretty interesting. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it adds that element that most stories need, where you need a rebel. Like so far, every character is more or less playing a certain role, staying in the box, doing what they're supposed to do, and I think this was the rebel moment.
For book 3, do you guys have like a favorite storyline or arc out of all the different characters we bounced around? I know for me, I really enjoyed spending time with Spook and kind of getting to see him kind of come into his own, what motivated him, and a bit of his backstory there with clubs, and how like he was pretty much doing what he could to like make amends for it.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's the best way to put it. Just like Clubs, I think, was trying to make amends for his life choices by picking up Spook when he did from his sister. How about you guys? Favorite story arc?
Learning more about the Chondra was really interesting to me, because it's, we hadn't touched on that too much, and there's clearly a whole nother side of everything where, for the other types of characters we kind of got enough of a feel, but that one was like, oh, this is new, very new.
Right.
I certainly would have enjoyed reading more about the Chondra, and I think I saw on one of his live streams that there might be a novella related to the Chondra in the future.
That would be cool.
I agree. That would be very cool.
Yeah. To see when they first surrendered their lives to the Lord Ruler to become Chondra. Yeah. And you gotta believe pretty strongly in your master's mission to be willing to sacrifice yourself for that, to become something completely different. So, I mean, they had to have believed very strongly in what he was doing, which is kind of a demented sort of thing, but...
Well, yeah, to believe that he's the hero of ages, and to give up your Pharaoh-Chemi so you can more or less be a slave.
Yeah.
But it's okay, because pyramid schemes are real, and have all your minions do it. Which is kind of fits with that. Remember, Rashik was kind of selfish. So no need to share the knowledge unless he were playing, except for the caches they found.
Yeah.
And he suppressed a lot of knowledge too, right? I really enjoyed seeing that through Sazed's eyes.
He almost botched up that whole deal. Like, if we didn't have a freaking keeper that found knowledge before the Ascension, like, we couldn't have put the world back in the correct orbit. We couldn't have fixed the people. We couldn't have, spawned all the other animals and the flowers and all that. Like,
what if he had died in that battle, right? Like, then what would happen?
Yeah, that's true. Do you kind of wonder if Ruin, deep down, knew who Sazed was and was purposely holding back to try and keep him alive, hoping that he'd be able to utilize him in the same way he did Rashek?
I don't
Good
know.
question.
Maybe.
I think he would still be a little too selfish where, it's all about him, and the whole conversation with Vin as they're both mystical floating orbs or whatever.
Yeah.
Where she's like, you can't even see it. You don't just create people to destroy them. You create them to watch them grow, and this, that, and the other. And it's like, you can't even see it. You've already lost. So I don't know. I think due to him only having one of the powers, and that's where things get weird, because like as the Mist Spirit died talking to Ellen, a body fell. A body was there. So I don't fully understand. I do, but I don't, because like both the powers came together or were the same thing and somehow got split and created humanity, and yet the humanity or the humans were controlling the consciousness for controlling the spirits. But then there was a body of which didn't have a mind, because the mind was the prison for the Well of Ascension to hold, like, I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of what ifs, I guess.
There certainly is. And we don't really appreciate the scope until we get to the end of just like Ruin and Perseverance and like what all they were involved in and what all they saw and did.
It'd be interesting, sometimes there are those books where you go through the whole series and then there's the same story, but it's written from a different character's perspective.
Yes.
It'd be very interesting to have the same story, but from Ruin's perspective or Preservation's perspective.
Yeah.
Because, they're the puppet masters, right? It's like, how
Mhm.
are we playing this chessboard instead of seeing it from like the pawn's view?
Right.
I was going a different direction with that when you started talking about, I'd really like to see it from Rashik's perspective.
That too.
Like here he is trying to get ready to take up the power again and deal with Ruin, who's been like whispering and muttering and, saying things in his head all this time. And here he's got all these trivial issues, or so they seem to him. That would be a lot of fun. I wish we got to see more of the crew in book 3. We talked a bit about it when we covered book 2, but like you really fall in love with all these characters in book 1, and then book 2 and 3 we don't get a whole lot. I do enjoy spending as much time as we do with Vin and Ellen and seeing them grow, and just like the different leadership perspectives with the different characters, like as Pierre was saying earlier, with Ellen kind of coming into his own. And realizing like there's an idealist sort of way, and then there's a realist sort of way about the tough calls we have to make and the sacrifices we have to make. Let's see, there's just, we could spend a couple hours just going over the third book alone. Another laugh out loud moment for me that I really appreciated was when they had their dance.
Their first dance.
Their first dance. We finally get that first dance. With war and everything else, and how he sends a guy off to get a book for him. That way,
Not just any book, a very specific book.
Yes, almost romantic, right?
Almost.
And then that ending, or that exit, was pretty snazzy too.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I think, that part like let you into the characters a little bit more. Not only their role in the world and all these problems they were trying to solve, but also just the two of them. Like we didn't get too many moments of their development as a couple.
Right.
Yeah, it was more just hinted at. It was like, oh, hey, we've spent 2 years together, and you're trying to be the emperor, and I'm the person who slaughtered everybody else in your way.
Yeah. That whole scene at the ball was really interesting, especially the second time they went back and she was trying to find the store and she got imprisoned in the vault.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really, I think that was one of my favorite interactions. Sorry, I'm kind of going on a tangent now, but Vin's interactions with Ruin, I thought were really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to see the parallel because Ruin tries to prey on who he thinks are people who are weak, and he really finds out just how strong Vin is because and somebody mentioned earlier in the chat that I think it was Taylor mentioned how Vin, if Vin would just be a little more trusting. And I think that played to her benefit in her interactions with Ruin because she didn't trust him at all. There was just no way that he could be her brother. And then on the side, we have Spook, who is so enamored with Kelsier, and we really see how much he misses Kelsier because he's willing to grasp at any straw that Kelsier might still be alive in some form. And Ruin was able to use that to manipulate him. And when Kelsier's spirit first popped up on the scene, I was like, yeah, that's not Kelsier.
Yeah.
I had a feeling it had something to do with Ruin, but I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to play out. So it's just interesting to see the polar opposites there, and see. I think that benefited Vin that she wasn't nearly as trusting as Spook was.
Well, I want to give Spook props too, because as I was going back through and re-listening to this, even with Ruin's intervention and trying to like force his hand to do stuff, there were a couple moments where Spook went against Ruin, where Ruin's like pushing like, hey, kill, hey, do this. And even though he thought it was Kelsier, he still held true to his values. And he's like, no. Like there were some moments where, he just killed out of reflex when Ruin's like, kill. But there were several moments too where he's like, no, like hold back. In a way, even though there's this sliver of a god telling me to do these things, like he had enough strong will to hold to his conviction.
It was all about the lady, though.
The
only reason he was like, I'm not going to murk everybody here, because he was like, yes, this poor, quiet girl sitting in her garden with no flowers, who I feel this bond with. It was all about the lady, and Spook gets the lady at the end.
Spook gets the lady at the end. Everybody's dead.
Yep.
Pete, I think we need you to do a voiceover for like the Cliff Notes version of this.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, we'll just do 30-second summaries where, let me tell you about Mistborn. Sazed doesn't get the lady, Spook gets the lady, and everybody else is dead. Okay.
Carl, you didn't do the voices.
Oh, that's true. That's what we got Pete for. But yeah. Gosh.
I guess Breeze does get the girl too, though.
Yeah.
His little puffball.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. That is true.
That was definitely some comic relief.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Breeze is great. He through the whole time as we get to know Breeze, I keep thinking of him. I don't know. It's hard to play, but I think of him like that. He's cocky. He's full of himself. He enjoys the finer things in life. He's just, yeah. Yeah, he's very funny.
He certainly is. He certainly is. Definitely one of my favorites.
I wish I had that quote, but essentially Breeze is talking about how green plants or green would be nice, and how, black is just so boring. And if I was this evil thing of doom, I would do, red, because, red's not something you could forget. Look at those rivers. They run red like blood and blah, blah, blah. And Caesar just calls him out, and he's like, if someone looks at your actions as well as your words, you're not as callous as you seem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, we could easily spend hours talking about this book. Wanted to give you guys an opportunity to bring up any big moments or things from book 3 that stood out to you that you feel we didn't cover, and probably do a couple rapid fire questions before we wrap things up, because I know it's getting late Sunday night. But if you had to pick an MVP for book 3, who would it be? Most valuable player / character. Maybe we need to change that. MVC.
Unless it's lit RPG, then it still counts as. Anyway,
you and your lit RPGs. For me, if we didn't go like main characters, which you're more than welcome to, I really feel Demu was a big character in book 3. He was definitely crucial in the final fight, and just watching his interaction as a general, and the main characters and everything.
Yeah.
He'd be my pick. Chaz, Tasha, do you guys need a minute? Peter always has an answer for me.
The only one that mattered was Caesar. I mean, like, without him, everybody's dead. Nobody gets a girl, and it's over. So
I'm in the same boat. I can't. I mean, there's so many other characters that had valuable pieces, obviously, but when you call it most valuable, I mean, it's the ending says it all.
Right. Yeah, I agree to a point. Although I do think Vin became almost a martyr, right? I mean, she ended up dying. She was the one that we kind of all thought and hoped would be the hero of ages, but in the end, I don't know. I wonder if it would have ended the way it did if she hadn't been so instrumental in figuring out how to seize the power of the mists and take on Ruin head on. And, if nothing else, it stalled. It gave them enough time to complete the other tasks they needed to complete. So,
she was very crucial
on this one. Even though Caesar's obviously the hero of ages, but I think she was the catalyst to the hero of ages.
I really enjoy her plan for how she's going to figure out how to use the mist again. I'm just going to go put myself in an impossible situation that I might die from and hope this works out. Ready, set, go.
I thought that was really funny because I remember a spot in one of the earlier books where she had the same idea and it didn't work. And so when I read that again, I was like, is it not going to work this time too?
I was about to say, yeah.
Well, and then that brings, Spook's big moment where he sent off the letter and Marsh intercepts it, and he didn't get the girl. But due to the influence of the girl, he was like, oh, I gave up right when we overthrew the Lord Ruler. And then he's like, wait, but Kelsier, you didn't make her dream come true. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make her dream come true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess Vin was very much the linchpin for everything. Like, without Vin pulling Ruin and all the Koloss, Ellen and that whole thing would have been dead. Without Vin becoming the Mist Spirit or Preservation and destroying Ruin, Caesar couldn't have collected both powers. You know.
Yeah. I think as far as who did the most work to make everything happen, I think it really came down to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a least favorite character or somebody you enjoy hating? Or just didn't sit well with you? There's a lot of the main characters that kind of grew on me over time. I'm trying to think if there's a character I really just disliked.
I feel like in this series, even the characters that were presented initially as ones that I should hate, then something happened and they showed a good side where they like helped, and I was like, oh.
Kind of like Set or whatever.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I guess you're playing your part to fight the good fight. Cool.
Fight the good fight.
Right?
I will say that the character that I really love to hate, and there's a couple of them, but so I'll get the minor one out of the way first, and that's the Koloss. I said it in the last stream. I don't really care for the Koloss, but I did grow to like them a little bit more now, having learned who they are and how they came about, and it is really interesting, even though they're still not my favorite characters.
Yeah.
The one character that I really loved to hate was Marsh. You know, and that's a tough call because, you know, he was Kelsier's family. He was his brother, and all of a sudden he becomes this just outrageous. Orianne was a little annoying. That's true.
But she gets such a reaction out of Breeze.
Yeah, she does. Yeah. But yeah, I think Marsh is one that I really love to hate. He was kind of like he was almost the Darth Vader of the Mistborn series for me. Like,
yeah.
You know, and he didn't have a redemption arc like Darth Vader did, but you know.
There is Era 2.
I thought Marsh had a redemption. Well, I thought he kind of had it where he's kind of in the blood frenzy, about to murk Vin, and then he's like, that earring. And, you know, that he was doing it for his lady. I guess if we're sticking with that theme, because apparently everybody's got to be 007 and get the girl. Freaking Ham had a girl from the get-go. And yes, he was protecting her, but, like, come on now. Like, Vin and Ellen, like, right. They're the Emperor and Empress, and, you know, the defeater of the Lord Ruler. Like, they did some stuff. You know, even Kelsier's lady with the freaking, I have a picture of a flower that passed around from all these different people that, you know, inspired, you know, Breeze to take a snap at Caesar for his whole, like, I believe, but I don't really believe, and Caesar to recreate him because of the religion that he preached. And, you know, Tindwyl, like, developed Ellen, and that's where he, you know, became the emperor that he should have been. Just kidding, everybody's dead. And then, like, everyone's lady had, like, a big part, except for Ham. And he had one from the get-go. And now he's a woman in the upcoming thing. So, yeah.
Wait, what?
Or in the series for the, either the screenplay thing, he's supposed to be redrafted. Him and Docs are supposed to be she's instead of he's.
Yeah.
And I guess it fits because his other half, the she, didn't do anything. Right. Other than show up and be like, oh, hey, we lived happily ever after.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It does eliminate a lot of lesser parts of the story that you don't have to tell in the movie or whatever if you switch up the genders a little bit or whatever. Yeah, it's true. I can. Yeah, I forgot about that. So when you said he's a woman in the upcoming story, I'm like, wait, in Mistborn Era 2, he switched genders? Like, spoilers? Now I get you. It's all good.
All good. Yeah. So before we completely wrap things up, Chaz, what do you have coming up on your channel, man?
Well, a couple of things. I've got. I'm going to be doing a book review soon for Wheel of Time Book 1, and I did a live chat with with another BookTube friend about the book. We had done a buddy read for it, so I've just got to edit that. That's going to be a monster of a task, but that's coming up. But specifically for Mistborn fans, and I've already talked to you guys about this, but I'm going to be doing a casting Mistborn since Brandon Sanderson is writing a script for the Mistborn series. I figured it would be cool to put together our ideal castings for the characters in the book, who we think would fit those roles best in a live action setting. So I'm going to be putting that together. Carl and Pete are going to join me for that, hopefully, and that'll be on my channel probably in the next few weeks or so. So yeah, pretty excited about that.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm horrible with names. I'll have to do some research into it, but it's can't think of his name. Speaking of not thinking of names, Aquaman and or the Targaryen. He's
Drogo.
Yeah, he's gonna have to be in there somewhere. He can be the evil villain for once, but that's probably one of my picks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of good options. I've got a list of a few different people I think would make really good Steel Inquisitors. So
yeah, definitely looking forward to that. The movie cannot come out soon enough, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed Brandon Sanderson can make it work. Natasha,
and it's his baby.
Yeah. Natasha, you said you have some new recipes coming out. What else is up and coming with Each Treats and Parsnips?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. We have some cooking demos coming up, a couple Motivation Mondays and Wellness Wednesdays that are live streaming on Instagram in the near future. And then I have some big plans for October. Happens to be my favorite month and just coincides with a couple fun things. So check them out.
Very cool. Very cool. And last but not least, Peter.
Real quick side note, Taylor was talking about completely defeats Ham sparring with Vin in the book to where he's stronger, but she beats him because she's faster. That, and there's a lot of scenes where he's always just running around in like a sleeveless vest and, it's like open in the front and he's like, I'm a pewter burner. I'm burly. And like, I get the fact that they needed, equality and they needed so many male and female characters. But at the same time, like through most of the series up until like the final moment, Vin, there's a strong female character throughout it. So like, I felt, they were, and, Tyndall is a big thing, and willowy wood Chondra lady that breaks out Tensoon. There were a lot of strong female characters, but I guess they weren't in the core group. But as far as what we have going on, buttons, Geek Out 36 is Life Reset Human Resource. Sorry if you are not on book 4 yet. It was one of our things we did when we initially started Geek on My Sleeve. So it's probably, 2 years old by now for when we did 1, 2, and 3. Phenomenal lit RPG series. Yeah, so that's coming up next weekend. Life's been crazy trying to get some more reviews and other stuff out throughout the week. But if you tune in next week, Life Reset is an amazing lit RPG. 5 is already supposed to be out. 4 and 5 came fairly close in timing. But that is our next event coming up.
Yes. And then the week after that, we go back to the Cosmere of Stormlight, Geek Out number 37. And we're trying to do that the last week of every month up until the release of book 4, which I am super pumped about. So, yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I put these in here and I didn't find a good time to utilize them. Long and short of it is you can't read it off this, but it's the breakdown of the ferrochemical metals, the breakdown of the allomantic metals, and the breakdown of the hemalurgy. Brandon Sanderson does a board game, and that's where all of this is from.
Oh, okay.
Need to encompass links. Haven't picked up the board game. Tempted to. Sounds cool. And yeah, that could have been things to break down that I didn't utilize, but I did the work to put them in there, so I have clicked the buttons.
Buttons have been clicked. Coppermine.net, 17 Shard, great resource for more Cosmere related content. We barely scratched the surface of book 3. There's so much more we could have gotten into. But with that being said, thank you, Chaz and Natasha, for geeking out with us over this series. And yeah, pushing buttons.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.